Hello, everyone. Welcome to Empower You. It is so good to see you tonight. The goal of Empower You, as you know, is to educate, enjoy, engage. That's the goal of these free sessions where we try to help you to become more empowered in your lives. We want to get you involved in just really important topics like what's going on in the city of Cincinnati and geez, how to have a little fun in this pandemic with organic gardening. I'm a little out of my element, as I think I've mentioned to you, and I've already told Betty and Karen, no eggs. So it's great to have our guests with us tonight, and I want to do just what I normally do, just because I think it's really important, and that's introduce you to our staff that work so hard to bring you the Empower You sessions. We've got for those of you who know everyone, we've got Betty Overstreet, our great executive director, Jill Google, our operations director, Bill Roll, our treasurer, Jay Grunke, who's on the board tonight. Thank you, Jay. Our political director, Joe Platt, Ken Bowman, Karen Cartier, who's a presenter tonight, Bill Monier, Nita Thomas, and Barb Horowitz. I've got to tell you, our board is really honored to have the chance to learn with you tonight. As I think we've told most of you, Empower You Studio opens back up on April 6th, where we'll be seating 43 people, and we'll be asking you to wear masks that night, but we're thrilled to have live classes back. And I noticed one live class is almost about half full, so apparently people are ready to come and see some live classes, but anybody who's not feeling it, just you can watch from home, just like you're doing tonight. So we are a free university, and I can't kind of overrate this because it's not easy to do what we do with no money. So we're going to pass the hat tonight. Donate if you can. The easiest way to donate is when you're signing up for a class to just go on, and there's a little spot to throw in a couple bucks, or you can go on the website where you'll find some interesting stuff and hit the donate key if you can. Many of you have done that, and I really want to thank you for that tonight. So, we always do a required reading session. This article is a very important article, and it's going to feed into our next class when I talk about it right in the beginning. The article is Equity is a Mandate to Discriminate. Everywhere I turn, literally, I see this word equity. It is the new buzzword that has taken over everything about everything. I'm going to be talking to you about it. It's really taken over Ohio education also, as I've kind of delved into Ohio education. It's been shocking. Every third word is equity, and I don't even know if some people really understand what it means. I'm not sure I understand what it means, but this article really is a short article, but I think it sums it up pretty well. Check it out. It's right on, the link to it is on empoweryouohio.org under tonight's class. So we talked the other night about our poor friend Mr. Potato Head being canceled, and then the night before that, poor Dr. Zeus. And I'll tell you, this next one, this is a smelly story. And there he is, Pepe Le Pew. He's the next to be canceled by cancel culture. Right when our friends at the Cincinnati Enquirer have let us know that skunk season is underway, here comes Pepe Le Pew, a character introduced in 1945. And because of his behavior that leads to rape culture, Pepe is going to be written out of the next LeBron James Space Jam sequel, where he is starred before poor Pepe. Gosh darn, he kissed a girl without consent. It was against her will. She struggled mightily to get away, but he won't release her. He locks the door to prevent her from leaving. Pepe's a cartoon. So sad. One more. And I know many of you are thinking, well, gosh, Dan gave away a Mr. Potato Head for our giveaway last class, and then we gave away a box of cool Dr. Zeus books, which I would have liked to have had myself. And you're probably thinking, okay, so Dan's going to give away Pepe. No, we're not giving away Pepe Le Pew tonight. But tonight's giveaway, I've got to tell you, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a little change up. We're going to give it away at the end of the class tonight. If you want a chance to win, just go down to the Q&A section. That's going to be where you ask any questions to our first guest, Steve Goodin, or also our second guest on organic gardening. Just if you want a chance to win, and it's a pretty good giveaway, just enter your email address now, and you'll also have a chance to do that at the end of the class. So a little bit, I feel like I wanted to talk to you about the stimulus bill. So a few of the top-notch Empower You students who are out there may remember that back on November 14th, 2019, I taught a little class called About the Debt. We went over a few charts. For those of you who have been to Empower You Studio, there's a 48 by 96 image of what you see on the screen explaining the national debt. And I really like the chart because it shows two big circles. If you can take a look at it, the outside big circle, which is like the whole circle, that's expenses. And the expenses in 2019, which is the last year I have data for, were 4.472 trillion. Now the inner circle, that's the revenue. So you can see right now, without anything changing, that the expenses are radically greater than the revenues by about 1/4, which you can see from the chart there. So the revenues for the federal government were 3.472 trillion, which is the inner circle, and the expenses were 4.472 trillion, which is the outer circle. So I just want you to picture, adding this 1.9 trillion stimulus, and what you get is our deficit last year was $1 trillion. If you add the stimulus of 1.9 trillion, look at your chart, the total deficit is now $2.9 trillion. I want you to think through how shocking this figure is. So the deficit of 2.9 trillion is almost equal to our existing total revenue of the federal government. It's a shocking amount. It's a gosh darn terrible amount. And the big grift we talked about the other day, the big grift is that they say that this is about COVID-19 relief. Now, I hear that a part of the bill is $86 billion tucked in there for big city pension relief. And I know one of our guests tonight, Steve Goodin, was instrumental in the pension reform a few years back. And I'm curious to find out if any of that 86 billion, at least if it's going to be spent, and it's going to be spent, we'll go to the city of Cincinnati. So we'll ask Steve about that a little bit. So it's a shockingly big deficit, and it's really hard for me to even look at. So our class last Thursday night, it was fact-filled. My sincere thanks to Dr. Erica Berkeley for helping us come to grips with how to deal with fear, grief, and anger in the pandemic. If you need resources for your family or your loved ones, make sure to watch the program. It'll help you. It was really good. It was not some kind of touchy-feely thing. She really had some great ideas and some great resources that are in print. You can also bring up her PowerPoint under the class on empoweruohio.org, or just rewatch the class. And to rewatch the class, you only have to wait 24 hours after the class. Go to the class on empoweruohio.org, look for the link of the recording, and watch it and share it with your friends. It was a great class. So leading up to Thursday night, March 11th, I just have to tout this class as a class with just a lot of buzz. There he is right there on the screen, Dr. Douglas Frank, who returns to Empower You to discuss climate change. Maybe a little carbon tax, maybe a lot of carbon tax, maybe some higher gas prices. You know, Dr. Frank on Thursday night is going to talk to us about the data. He is one of Empower You's most popular speakers, and really is one of the foremost celebrities of social media in the United States. I can't wait to hear what he has to say on Thursday night. I hope you'll join us. It's going to be a great class. And then we go to March 16th. This is a class that was really brought by popular demand, which means it was brought by you when we had our first pirate radio session out on the ocean. And people ask us for two things that night. They ask us, could you do a class that would allow us to look a little deeper at MeWe, a new social media site like Facebook, to help us understand better how to navigate it? I've had a little trouble with MeWe too, so I can't wait to hear Rich Inman, who's kind of a tech guru, who's going to walk us through MeWe. He's also going to talk about a site, a social media app I don't know anything about called Telegraph. Prior to that, we're going to have an update on the Convention of States project from Mike Mowry, who's the Ohio director. Now, I will tell you, the Convention of States is a super controversial subject. If you don't know it, if you don't know what it's about, you need to be here. It's an early 6:45 start time. And I urge you to be here because really the Convention of States is one of the few opportunities for people to win. There aren't many, it doesn't seem like, that are out there right now. So I hope you'll join us for the March 16th class on navigating social media, which will be great. So tonight, um, we're going to start off with Steve Goodin, who was appointed interim council member to the Cincinnati City Council on November 30th, 2020. Goodin is a proud product of public schools. He received his undergraduate degrees from Miami University, his law degree from University of Cincinnati College of Law, and he also did coursework at UVA's College of Law JAG School. He was raised in a union household and understands the value of hard work. He's a partner at Goodin Law, where he serves on the executive committee. His primary goal is to address systematic corruption at City Hall. He was named to, many of you probably will remember, to replace Jeff Pastor, who was indicted for corruption. He hopes to return council's focus to creating jobs, providing safe neighborhoods, and fostering more and inclusive city for all. Steve has been involved in public service throughout his whole life, including serving for the Peace Corps. He's also served as the assistant Hamilton County prosecutor for 5 years. And what I want to say is that I was thrilled when he accepted our opportunity to join Empower You, because when you have somebody that has a resume like Steve's that can get injected into an area that's got problems, it's exciting to see. So Steve, welcome to Empower You. We're so glad to have you.
And thank you very, very much for having me here tonight. And thank you for all that you all do and your staff does to bring these issues forward. You are people after my own heart. So I'm very, very pleased to be here. And I will be very quick and to the point in terms of kind of setting the table for some of the things I want to talk about. Dan, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not the kind of person, I don't think, by temperament or background, who typically ends up on Cincinnati City Council. That has become a den of progressive bad ideas over the last decade or so. And I feel very lucky and blessed to have this opportunity to serve, no matter for however long it ends up being. I mean, you're right, my background is in law, it's in municipal finance, it's in law enforcement. Ironically, it's somewhat in ethics. I have worked extensively with the Ohio Ethics Commission over the years on a variety of things involving public corruption. So this is right in my wheelhouse, and I just feel like I've sort of somehow been prepared for this very unique moment, even though I didn't know I was preparing for it. But you're right, in terms of what we got to do going forward, I mean, job one is helping guide this region out of the COVID pandemic, kind of what I call the economic hangover of COVID. I mean, the crippling debt, both federal level, the municipal level, that's coming, dealing with what this is all going to mean, number one, to commercial real estate in our central business district. And it's not good, and what the effect of remote working is going to be on our city's earning tax, which makes up more than 70% of its revenue. That is also going to be devastating, I feel, over a period of a number of years. So we absolutely have to get the city's financial house in order. But first, we have to get our house in order in terms of just basic ethics. And I think we have basically lost 18 months on these ridiculous texting scandals. And now, in the out and out corruption that we have seen, it's resulted in a third of city council being indicted. And I can tell you, people ask me what city council is like. And I said, truthfully, I've never worked someplace where a third of my colleagues have been indicted. So it's a pretty fascinating time. My job, the other thing is we absolutely must preserve the role of private capital in our city, in our neighborhoods, and encourage investment of private capital, and keep folks both in town and out of town from running away from excessive regulation and from all the issues about affordable housing I mean, look, we can have a conversation about affordable housing, and there may be some legitimate market-driven solutions that we've seen in other places, but we need more housing at all levels. And I do fear that a lot of our developers, both in and out of town, are being kind of run out of town. These are folks who want to put their capital at risk and bring jobs and investment here, and we're doing a terrible job. We should be encouraging this and not making them go jump through a bunch of politically correct hoops. I mean, I've got a lot to talk about. I also want to talk about law enforcement crime if we get a few minutes. I mean, there's been a definite uptick in crime. And I think there are some kind of weird places where someone kind of coming from my point of view, and even some of the progressives, that we do have sort of there's a couple places in terms of kind of the militaristic nature of policing these days where we do have sort of a right-left meeting point in some cases. But, happy to touch on, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, public policy is my thing. As Dan and I were talking about before we started, I think I've worn my friends and family out with it. So I'm going to try to wear you guys out with it too. So Dan, I'm happy to take whatever questions y'all might have.
So I want to start with this whole issue of affordable housing. So from what I'm understanding with that, a levy has been, not a levy, but a ballot initiative has been placed on the ballot where it's about a $50 million project to create affordable housing in the city of Cincinnati. Now, something like this is passed in Columbus, right?
Well, the thing in Columbus, I think, is a little bit different. But what they've done here is an absolute poison pill. And I mean, I guess maybe the easiest way to address it might be to take kind of look at it from a 30,000 foot point of view. I don't disagree that we have a sort of housing crisis at the working class level. And maybe crisis isn't the right word. You hear this number kicked around everywhere. There's some study that said that we're short 28,000 affordable units in the city of Cincinnati. And I guess that all depends on how you define affordable housing units. We're not short on properties that take Section 8 vouchers. I mean, there's plenty of those. We have neighborhoods, in fact, where there's too much of a concentration. Like the West End, for instance, there's 72% of the housing there is subsidized, and the folks that are trying to make that grow and make that into something else, they're saying no more. There are some neighborhoods, however, where we have workforce housing, what they call workforce housing, which is 80% of the average monthly income, where there's a small subsidy to help folks in the $50,000-$60,000 range, acquire a home. I think that's a conversation we could have, and there is some market-driven stuff that we could do there. And there are other cities that have raised private capital to help folks acquire homes and build wealth that way. So, but that's a whole separate conversation than what we're having right now. This is a group of what they call themselves affordable housing activists, but they've taken this idea from cities like Portland and others, where they want to take $50 million of the city's budget every year in perpetuity. There's no sunset in this, and put it into the hands of an unelected board of folks who would then spend it on well, they say affordable housing, but we don't know exactly what that means. And it's an awful idea. $50 million, is 9% of our annual budget. There's no way that does not have impact and touch, essential services. There's no way that isn't going to impact our police budget or our fire budget. There's no way that doesn't impact our pension payment. I mean, it's an absolutely terrible idea. There's a sign that's sitting up in, I think they took it down because they got so much bad press. But it was, in one of the nonprofits in Over the Rhine, they hung up a sign that said, defund the police, vote for the charter amendment. So, this isn't accidental. Affordable housing, first, I don't even like the term. I think it's a misnomer. I think it's just, some housing probably needs to be subsidized for certain people, but only for certain periods of time to help them get on their feet. The last affordable housing project that we passed, you had a 4-year window. You have 4 years to get in there, get on your feet, and get out. That's the kind of thing we need to encourage work. And I don't think that's such a bad thing from that standpoint. But this is just a cash grab by a bunch of activists and nonprofits. It's a horrible idea. It will put the city in a horrible position. It won't even help the people that it's meant to help. And again, if you're going to have affordable housing with no parameters where the folks have to get on about their lives, find jobs, improve themselves, then it doesn't work. It just becomes another endless entitlement that we're paying for, and it's not good for the city. So,
is there any chance it'll pass?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely there is. I mean, look, 9,500 people signed that petition. And, when you walk up to the average person on the street who isn't, deeply versed on these topics, if someone walked up to me 10 years ago and said, hey, are you for affordable housing? I mean, who isn't in theory for affordable? Like, no, I want to pay more. I want my mortgage higher. Like, I mean, it's absurd. I mean, if you think about it, most people don't know even what that means and what it entails. And a lot of the folks that signed this didn't understand what $50 million was relative to our annual budget. So it's, no, I'm very concerned about it. I mean, I've been working with the Chamber of Commerce and a lot of folks in the business community, and we're going to really be out trying to educate the voters. You'll note that several city council candidates have endorsed it.
Yeah.
Well, at least one or two of the mayoral candidates have endorsed it. Several others flirted with it. I'm sorry.
Okay, so just I think people are interested in knowing on the whole police issue. Are you holding the line on the number of police in the city?
Not just that, we're trying to get 2 new recruit classes approved. I mean, we are at our low. A lot of folks don't know this either. This came out of council this week, but this is the first time in 15, 20 years we've been below 1,000 uniformed police officers in this city, which means with all the various shifts and so forth, that there's some days where there's only like maybe 300, 320 police officers available to answer a call. In a city of our size, that's just not enough. And you see that reflected in the violent crime rate. You see that reflected in our record number of murders last year. The police can't engage in proactive policing the way they used to. They're not out there doing the so-called community policing, which means, actually going out and walking a beat and figuring out who's who and what's going on. So no, I can say that it looks as though we're going to have state and federal dollars for 2 new recruit classes, but that's going to take some months to get those folks ready and on the street. So we're not only holding the line, we're going that way. I'm very proud to say that we the mayor and I worked on this new FOP contract with these folks. Not only do we not defund the police, they got a raise. And I thought it was important to send that to them. The morale is not great in that department. And I think that we have to do everything we can to show these folks this isn't a race issue in my mind. That a lot of the neighborhoods that are the most severely impacted are African-American neighborhoods or inner city neighborhoods, and they're crying out for more policing. I've never heard anybody talk about defund the police at the scene of a murder.
Thank you. That's great news. So about the pension real quick, I know you were really
Right.
on that. Is part of the stimulus money going to go to Cincinnati's pension plan?
No, it's a complete disaster. No, I mean, our pension is going to have to be, we negotiated a deal back in 2013-14 when Cranley first became mayor, where, we sat all the public labor unions down in the room with the federal judge. It took us 18 months, but we negotiated cuts across the board, including, some changes to benefits, including some healthcare benefits. And the city kicked in more money, and frankly, the city had been dilatory for years, or delinquent, I guess is a better word, in terms of funding it properly. And we came to this 30-year deal, and the pension actually came roaring back. And we were looking pretty good there for several years. But now the pension is hurting. It keeps missing its assumed rate of return now for several years. The way pensions, public pensions anyway, have to be invested under federal and state law, they have to be invested very conservatively. So when you have a dip like you did during the COVID kind of roiling markets, they got all the downside, none of the upside. Like for those of us who have a 401k, we can just click that, on our Fifth Third webpage, aggressive investment piece and really see some good returns. Our pension has not. The cost of healthcare keeps going up. And then the Social Security Administration just decided out of the blue that to add almost 5 years to the average life expectancy of all Americans. So back in 2013, we did not, we used the old life expectancy as approved by the Social Security Administration. Now everyone is magically living almost 5 years longer, and that's 5 years more we have to cover from an actuarial standpoint. So I'm sorry, I know I'm talking fast, but the bottom line is the pension's hurting again. We're going to have to go back to the table and either look at cuts or try to sell the pension to, say, OPERS or one of the bigger, big state pension plans who might be able to take on some of the unfunded liability and fix it. But the federal government, we're nowhere close to being something that they would bail out. And if we do get some of the CARES dollars or some of this other, federal, funding money, it's going to go to plug other holes in the budget. So unfortunately, no, that's not going to be a magic fix. The pension, we are too small of a city to have our own pension fund. We're the only city in Ohio left with one. Everyone else is combined with one of the larger public plans. There's safety in numbers. For instance, we have about $3 billion in assets under management. OPERS has 1 trillion plus.
Right.
They can absorb a down year. At $3 billion, you really can't. It sounds like a lot of money, but for a 8,000, 9,000 member pension plan, it's really not.
I understand. So listen, when you got appointed, were, did somebody kind of give you a call and say, Steve, so we've got a few people that may be kind of dropping off. Are you ready to go? Did you know anything about it, or who did you get the call from?
Not really. I got the call really from Judge Winkler. I mean, I was the first person. This is, everyone wants to make history, and I made history as being the first person in Hamilton County appointed, by a judge to a council seat, or really, I guess, any seat from what we can tell, due to corruption, a corruption arrest. It's a very, very unique circumstance. And we're actually working on a change to state law. So something like, I should not be in this seat, frankly. I mean, in all fairness, I'm delighted to be here and I'm happy to do what I'm doing. But in fairness, it shouldn't have come to this. But no, I got a call from Judge Winkler, who knew from my prior involvement at the city. He knew I've been involved behind the scenes at the city as an attorney and an advisor for the last 10 years. So he called me up and said, look, I'm interviewing a handful of people, and we think that Jeff Pastor, who I replaced, his indictment had already become public at that point, and it became apparent that he was going to step down, and that the appointment power was going to fall to a judge. And due to the fact that it was a corruption arrest, so he did his interviews, and I went in and made my pitch. And the joke I've said I've used over and over is that Judge Winkler, in a stunning lapse of judgment, appointed me, and then in an even bigger stunning lapse of judgment, I accepted. So here we are. And but that's kind of how it happened. It was very quick.
So now that you're here, what can you actually what do you want to do to kind of stop the corruption?
Well, we've got a lot of things. I mean, there's a couple charter amendments that are going forward this spring on the ballot that deal with how to remove and kind of clean up that process of when someone's done something bad. But I want to go back. I'm spending a lot of time this summer or the spring, summer, and probably even I may take some charter amendments myself to the voters in the fall that deal with what I think are the underlying issues. And the underlying issue is this. Folks, thank God, still want to put private capital at risk in large scale developments in this city. They do, and it's fantastic. And in order to have them do that, we must incentivize them in some way. If we do not, they will go to other nearby cities. We have seen it happen. They will go to Newport, they'll go to Indianapolis, they'll go to Columbus. So tax abatements are just part of the game. And frankly, it's not a big loss to the taxpayers, no matter what these homeless activists, and affordable housing people say. It's just simply not. If you have a vacant lot that is generating almost no revenue, for tax revenue, foregoing a piece of future tax revenue to get someone to bring in new residents who will pay the earnings tax and who will pay property taxes long-term and who will engage in consumer spending, that is an absolute win for us. And there's no reason in the world why we shouldn't do it. But the negotiation of those things has spilled away from the city manager, away from the mayor, and into the council chambers. And that is an absolute recipe for corruption. So when you have, and again, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. But what Mr. Pastor's accused of doing is taking a $45,000 bribe in exchange for rallying votes for millions of dollars in incentives. And we can say that's when it's obviously wrong and it's immoral and it's unethical, but it's not illogical. I mean, that's a good deal. So we have to figure out a way to take council out of those day-to-day pieces of the negotiation. Most of these folks do not have even a hint of a background in this area of municipal finance, tax incentives, or know what even tax increment financing is. I mean, these are relatively, I guess, complex concepts. Some of them educate themselves on it and learn it, some do not. But part of what I'm trying to do is to reform the development process to take those opportunities away.
So, Steve, with respect to the tax abatement issue and the number of tax abatements, one of the things I think about is especially all the tax abatements in Hyde Park. People that are in the county, how do they kind of reconcile all the tax abatements in terms of all those fees that they pay, where their fees are being increased because all the tax abatements given away in the city?
Well, look, that is a legitimate issue. I do question that. I mean, I do challenge the premise a little bit. I mean, in that, our property taxes vary widely by community. I mean, we have this kind of strange tax scheme in Ohio where we pay for social services stuff via tax levies, countywide tax levies, anything that's mental health services or homeless help or, across the board. We do it through property taxes rather than sales taxes, which is strange to me and unique to Ohio. And then, our individual communities often have police, fire, levy, and additional school stuff there. So it's really not uniform throughout the county. But the short answer is, if we don't have a healthy city and high paying residents in the city, the county pays more. I mean, we do generate, and one thing I will say, for the Cranley administration, I think the development department does a good job of establishing over a 30-year period, which is what you have to do when you look at these things. The fact that these are revenue pluses for the city, for the county as a whole. You were bringing taxpayers in who are going to spend money and pay the earnings tax, pay long-term, ultimately pay real estate taxes, pay the sales tax, and just generally raise and grow the economy. And if we don't do that these days, even in some residential developments, we have to do some 15-year stuff. And I think that's what you're talking about in Hyde Park. And I know it burns some people, but frankly, it's a competitive business, and if we don't do it, we'll lose those folks, to Claremont County, Warren County, and otherwise. And we see it. People vote with their feet.
So, how many people are running for a council position in November?
Right now, we are at a whopping 85 people have pulled petitions for 9 seats. We don't believe, or I don't believe, I should say, that we'll have nearly that many candidates. It is difficult, particularly in the COVID environment, to gather the necessary signatures to run. And we've always had a great deal of fall off. I would expect at the end of the day, we'll probably have about 30 to 35, bona fide candidates, actually make the ballot.
So how does somebody like yourself kind of rise above that level and get the support that that your resume shows? What do you do?
God, you sound like my campaign guys. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, look, the biggest thing I got to do is that Cincinnati is becoming a more sort of quote unquote progressive city by the day, and there's no question. And I'm just going to run unabashedly as what I am, which is a pro-business, pro-development candidate. I mean, we've tried to turn down, the noise on issues that can be kind of divisive in some ways. I mean, it used to be city council and spent a lot of time on resolutions on national issues that really just got everybody all angry. I am running straight out on jobs and job creation and bringing opportunity to all the neighborhoods. And, someone, asked me the other day, it's like, look, you're a white guy. What are you bringing, to a city that's 43% African-American? And my response is jobs. Like, I think and steering investment into these neighborhoods. And I've gone back and dusted off, the old Jack Kemp playbook. I was very lucky. I got to meet Jack Kemp back in 1988. It was a very impactful thing for me. And I think a lot of folks like me should, have not done well by disregarding the example he set. There's a lot of policies there that are market driven, pro-capitalism for these, that would really lift up and raise up a lot of these neighborhoods that are in crisis. And we just don't do it anymore. We look at it as a one budget cycle kind of deal where we're just kind of giving money to solve a problem. You can't just spend your way out of these things. People need a function and purpose in their lives. They need jobs. And that's going to be my focus. And I hope folks are listening, and I hope we have the resources and ability to get out there and get that message forward. I do think it's early. No one's really tuned in yet, but I think by this summer, people hopefully will be engaged.
You brought a smile to my face with the name Jack Kemp, and all those Empower You people out there. You may just see something from him. What a great mind he was. One quick question, and we'll let you go because I know you've got to run. And this is from one of our listeners. Can you give us a few of the names of the people who have endorsed the 50 million housing program, affordable housing?
Well, I know, and mostly they're sort of French candidates. Probably the most prominent one, and I was told this I saw this on social media, so take it for what it's worth. Okay, not everything is accurate, but there's a lady named Michelle Dillingham who came in 10th last time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she is a very, very vocal person in these circles, and I'm told that she has endorsed it, and I think she's kind of trying to walk that back in some way. And I'm working on a piece for the Business Courier and also running the Inquirer, where I'm saying, like, encouraging these media outlets to say, look, make these candidates take a position, because if someone's for this, it means they don't understand just the basics or the fundamentals of municipal finance. You cannot write off, we're a $1 billion municipal corporation. If you're willing to write off anywhere from 8 to 9% of your revenue per annum on something that is probably illegal, just give it to a bunch of nonprofits for the amendment doesn't even define what affordable housing means. I mean, that can mean a number of things. So if you're willing to do that, you're not fit for public office, in my view. So there are some folks out there. That's one. I think there's one named Lester Holt, or not Lester Holt. That's the TV guy. Holt is his name, and who's also very, very active on social media, who kind of runs in these circles, who's out there very much for it. This Gavi guy who's running for mayor, I know, has made it a centerpiece of his campaign.
Yeah.
And I know there's others.
Do you have, well, I'm going to have to let you go because I know
I'm sorry. I know you got to go. You got other people.
West Side, and I just want you to say hello to everybody over there for us. And you are a breath of fresh air to talk to, and just, I hope you can just inject yourself into that city of Cincinnati. And we all want it to be, we want it to be a great city. And for the first time, Steve, thank you so much for joining Empower You, and have a good night.
Dan, thank you all. And thank you all. All of you have a good evening. I do have to go to the West Price Hill Community Council via Zoom. So they're waiting on me now. So thank you all. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
That's great. So good to hear somebody with such a great resume make an influence, which I know we all want in the city. And it's great to hear about the no defunding of the police down there. So tonight's second part of our session, we're so glad to be able to talk about organic gardening, step towards sustainability. One of our board members, Karen Cartier, asked us if we do this class. It just sounded like fun to me. Karen is an avid reader, writer, learner, wife, and mother of two. She has worked in IT as a technical writer for over 30 years and is currently working full-time in IT. Outside of her paying job, she also serves as an officer in Toastmasters and also as a volunteer community educator for the Alzheimer's Association, which is a great organization. I had the opportunity to meet Karen's daughter, Leanne, I think 3 or 4 years ago, when I think her mother and father drug her kicking, made her come to a couple of Empower You sessions at Empower You Studio. And I just learned Leanne, who's going to be starting off our session, is a senior now at Wilmington College, majoring in, get this, criminal justice and Spanish. She's been successfully growing organic vegetables, both in ground and in containers, as a hobby for some time. I've got my notepad out, and I'm ready. And my wife has challenged me, Leanne, that I'm to bring her home something that I can put in the earth and go for it. So Leanne and Karen, welcome to Empower You. I turn it over to you. Go for it.
Thank you for having me, Dan. I'm so excited. This is one of my new passions. I've recently I've been gardening for many years, but this last year I just really went into it. I'll start my presentation. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So I'm so excited about gardening. I really want to share this with people and get people to grow their own food and really do something and grow something beautiful. I hope to inspire other people to grow stuff. There are many benefits to gardening, and this is not even an exhaustive list. First, I have nutrition. Like things from the grocery store some vegetables have been picked green, like not ripe, and then shipped like from all the way from California. And they've been sprayed with chemicals to get them ripe. And so you're not getting as much nutrition as you can when you get them fresh. And we'll dive into that later in another slide. Another benefit is the flavor. So one of my favorite YouTubers is Roots and Refuse Farm, and she's from Arkansas. And one of my favorite quotes from her is, tomatoes from the grocery store taste like disappointment. And so tomatoes is one of those vegetables from the grocery store that is shipped way shipped unripe and then sprayed. And so you don't get that flavor as long as the nutrition. And so if you, vegetables from the garden just really taste different and they're just so much more flavor than you think from the grocery store. Another benefit is variety. So at the grocery store, again, there's only like one or two or just a few varieties of each vegetable. And even if you grow it from a nursery, from a transplant, or from seed, you get so much variety you can't even think of. You get different sizes, different shapes, and different colors and different flavors of each specific vegetable too. Um, Gardening and growing your own food is very helps with sustainability. So in sustainability in the way that um, with the food system we seen last year, food was leaving the shelves very fast, and there was a distribution disruption, and there was many other problems with the food process, how to get the food from the farmers and the growers to the grocery store. And so that helps you, you got food at home where you can easily get it. And in that way, it's sustainable. And it's also sustainable by helping the earth and not using like harsh chemicals or harsh farming practices as big agriculture would. Um, and another benefit is through mental health. So just being outside helps with depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions. And you also get a little bit of exercise out there. So um, just taking care of the soil, planting, you get a little bit of exercise. So that's always good. And there's something that just like being in the soil, touching the soil, just really helps you. And it helps a lot to relieve stress. It's one of those things that just relieves stress, and you don't have to think about other things. You can just focus on growing beauty and focus on your plants. And this is a positive hobby. So it's something you could do as a positive outlet. And this also, you can also help connect with your community. So connect with other growers by learning. Learning is a big one. And just sharing, and you get to share your vegetables with, you can talk to your neighbors, socially distance, share your vegetables with your neighbors and everything, and talk to people that you wouldn't usually talk to. And the last one on my list is help the bees. So that would be just planting anything, just flowers or anything is great for bees and other pollinators. So a lot of bees are dying, and growing plants and vegetables and flowers really helps give them food. And we've planted a mum last fall. And then when everything else died from that light freeze, this yellow mum was like the last thing. And we had a whole bunch of honeybees come to it. And they're taking their last food for the winter. And it was really cool to see all those bees. And it was like your own little personal beehive in this mum. And it was really cool to see that last year. So nutrition, one thing is, you know how your food is grown if you grow it yourself. You don't know how the food was grown when you get it from the grocery store. And you just get that reassurance. It wasn't, if you don't want to use chemicals or pesticides or anything, you know it wasn't sprayed with anything. You know it was in your soil. You know there's no chemicals or anything intaking in it. And also, you know how fresh it is. You don't know how fresh the food is at the grocery store. It can still be fresh, and it's better than eating unhealthy things. But anything vegetable is better than eating anything unhealthy. But when you grow it yourself, you can literally pick it off 2 seconds and then eat it, and you know that thing was living 2 seconds ago. And so I think that's really cool. Another thing I've learned is something called anthocyanins, and this is an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory. So anthocyanins is that purple and blue pigment in certain fruits and vegetables. So that's like the pigment for like black raspberries, blackberries. I think it's in cherries, and there's even purple, blue, and black tomatoes that we get to talk about. I think that's really cool. And so there's many health benefits to these anthocyanins. So if you get that, it really helps your body fight multiple things. And yeah, it's like eat the rainbow, you just eat all the colors. Growing your own food also encourages you to eat more vegetables. So um, one vegetable, for example, that I haven't really tried before that I was kind of freaked out at the grocery store was eggplant. And you're like, what's this weird vegetable? So we tried growing eggplant and we grew it in containers and it was really fun. And so I tried it and we had fried eggplant and it's really good. And that's something I wouldn't have tried if I didn't grow it. And so that's another way to help you eat healthier. And you get to find out about certain varieties that contain more antioxidants than others. There's always different varieties that have more antioxidants than the other. And when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about, for example, beets. There's white beet, yellow beet, dark red beet. And so there's the darkest red beet. And there's varieties called like bull's blood and Detroit's dark red. And so those are some of the darkest red beets. And so those have the really big, more nutrition in them. And so you get that option when you grow your own vegetables and you have that control. All right, one of the things that limits gardeners that's out of our control is the sun. So how much sunlight are you getting? When you decide to grow your own vegetables, fruits and vegetables, you gotta be aware of where the sun is, how much sun you get. So something to be considered shade is less than 4 hours of direct sunlight. Direct sunlight is the sun directly right there. It's not like filtered, like spotty. It's directly right there. So anything less than 4 hours is considered shade. Partial sun is about 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight. And full sun is 6 or more hours of direct sunlight. And so most vegetables really like and need about full sun. There are some vegetables that can be into partial sun and shade. Some vegetables that can be grown in shade are more like your herbs. So like cilantro, basil, sage, things like that. And that's another good thing because those are the ones that are good to have on your windowsill inside that you can easily, like culinary herbs, that you can just go in there and get. You can grow some vegetables in partial shade. They maybe grow slower than in full sun, but most most vegetables like full sun, like peppers and tomatoes, like the things you think about. To find out our growing time, you want to find out your last frost date. And so that's the date where it's no longer there's no more risk of frost. And that's an approximate date. It's not hard. It's not set in stone. So you Google your closest large city and then look up last frost date. And then you find that and you take that and then you find your first frost date. And so the first frost date would be around the time that you'd get your first freeze. So your last frost date is usually in the spring and your first frost date is in the fall. And you take that and you'd add them up and you'd find how long is your growing season for warm weather vegetables. And so we have about 2 categories for fruits and vegetables that we can use for this. We got frost tender things and frost hardy things. So frost tender are fruits and vegetables that cannot withstand a freeze. So they would die if it got anywhere below 32 degrees. So that's again like your peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, green beans. Those would die within a freeze. And there are vegetables that are frost hardy that can survive a freeze. And in this picture here, we have broccoli. I started this from seed. I started it from seed around the end of July. And I took this picture about December 23rd. So we've already had a couple good hard freezes by then. You can see it started producing a head of broccoli, and that's the beginnings of it. And so this broccoli did very well in the cold, and it did get a little hurt by that huge snowstorm we had in mid-February. I grew one other variety of broccoli, and surprisingly not all we had was a bed sheet covering them through that harsh snowstorm. And this one variety of broccoli, there's not much damage on it, so it survives surprisingly. It looks pretty good for what it went through. All right, and there's many different ways to plant. This is where you can get creative too. So you're not limited by where you live, is what I want to get to here. So you have the option to grow in containers. And so I started my first big container garden at the end of my driveway last year. So we had all these containers, and you can get creative with your containers. You can go as cheap as like a 5-gallon bucket. And the thing with containers is, most important, you want to have drainage holes on the bottom so water can drain down so you don't get soggy soil and then you get root rot. The other thing is how much space you have. The more space you have in your container, the bigger your plant can get. But you can grow in smaller containers. Like I had this little 13-inch here. I had some peppers, and then I had a peanut plant, and that was cool. That was the first time growing peanut. We had a peanut plant here. And so they didn't get as big as they could get, but we still got a pretty good harvest off of them. And then in here we had turmeric. I grew turmeric in here, and then we had ginger. And then surprisingly enough, I grew eucalyptus and lemongrass in this one. So that was fun. So those are the two biggest things to consider with containers is drainage hole and the size. Another option you have is vertical grow towers. So there's these towers that stack in containers, and you can go vertically instead of horizontally. Grow vertically, and you can grow like leaf lettuce and herbs in those. Strawberries are another good one I've seen. So grow vertically. There's things that hang off your door or hang off the wall. And another thing is like hanging baskets, and those save space. Another thing that's pretty new is grow bags. So these are made out of fabric grow bags. The good thing about this is when the roots go down and they go to the edge of the fabric, they feel the air, and then they die off when they feel air. So that it sounds bad, but it helps the root system to be more fibrous and look out for more nutrients. So I think that's good. So you get a better root system with those. And many of those have handles, so you can help move those around and get more sunlight, move to get more sun. Another option is hay or straw bales. And so I've seen where you can grow like potatoes or tomatoes in those, and there's where you want to get one with like no chemicals in it, and then you decompose it by using like fertilizer, and there's like a whole process, and you decompose it until it's basically like soil, like compost, and then you just grow in it, and it's all held together. And I think that's cool. The most conventional way to garden is in-ground gardening. And that'd be like where you just add soil, kill the grass, add soil, and add your nutrients, and you're just growing in the ground. And the thing with this is it's hard to control your soil. So if you have like clay native soil, that's going to be hard to grow because it's very compact and it holds on to a lot of water. And then if you have too sandy soil, then it's not going to hold on to nutrients and not hold on to water at all. Another option you have is raised bed gardens. And this is our garden, our main one. And we made this pretty inexpensively. We just took these are recycled timbers down the bottom of this. And we have 2 of those, and then we've nailed in like rebar right here. And then just PVC pipe and then a plastic fencing all the way around. And that was a pretty inexpensive way to build a large, this is about 10 by 12 garden bed. And then here we have a potato box. These are potatoes. And these are like those plastic decking boards. And we just put those together and then have a potato box. And then another option, this is great for like people in apartments too, is indoor gardening. So you can grow on your windowsill, and they also make these little like starting grow light things that you can just put on your kitchen counter, and then you could cook like culinary herbs, and then you got them right there for dinner. So you can just cut and go right there. And so I think that's a great idea. So you can grow, I believe you can grow anywhere as long as you have enough sun. And then here we have on this picture to the right, this is a blackberry, a dwarf thornless blackberry. And so I think that's cool. We got 1 or 2 blackberries in the fall, and then it's about to it's gonna bloom again in the spring. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, get creative with this. Even if you're in a homeowner association where you can't like grow food out in your backyard for aesthetic reasons, there's ornamental peppers. There's other fruits and vegetables that just look nice. They look ornamental, but you can eat them. And so you can sprinkle those through your front yard or front, like where you would grow flowers. Here's the turmeric plant we harvested. So that we have a kind of a short growing season for ginger and turmeric. And I kind of started this a little late, but we did get some turmeric. This is the mother plant, that grow through rhizomes. So you put a plant in there and it'd sprout and then make like babies. And so these are plants off of that, offshoots. And that's how much we got from just 2 plants right there. And this is a bigger picture of that container garden. So we made our own trellis, and that's great with gardening. It's very flexible. You can just use and get creative with what you have on hand. This is something we just had on hand. It might not look the best, or it's not the, yeah. But this is what we had on hand. So we got creative, and we just made a trellis out of that. We have this is a mini cantaloupe. It's called a sugar cube is the variety name. Mini cantaloupe growing on this side, and we have something called a cucamelon on this side. And we have that crawling up. And then here in the middle, we have my mom. And I remember in the spring when I was doing my research before we could start gardening in last spring, I saw another YouTuber called Am I Gardener, and he had videos of growing 10-foot tall tomato plants. And I thought that was awesome. I was like, I want 10-foot tomato plants. And so on the other side of the garden, I had a bamboo stick that was 10 foot, and the tomato I had on that got all the way to the top. And what you want with this is just to tie it, single stem it so they don't have offshoots, and then support it by tying it close to the pole. And the cool thing with tomatoes is they grow as long as they're like an indeterminate variety, which there's determinate and indeterminate variety. Indeterminate means it'll keep growing for as long as, for as much support you give it. So if we give it a 10-foot tall support, it can grow 10 foot tall. If we have like a 5-foot tomato cage, it's pretty much going to stay about 5 feet. So that's the cool thing with tomatoes. And so this got 10 foot tall. And with this one, we had PVC pipe hanging around too. So all we did was nail rebar in the ground and then put that 10-foot PVC pipe in there. And then I just tied this up. And these two are volunteer tomatoes, meaning from the tomatoes from the year prior that fell on the ground, they seeded themselves and grew up. And so we didn't even plant these. These are like freebies. So these came up all on their own, and I just put the post right there to give them support. Another cool thing with tomatoes is if you ever see the plant, they have little hairs in the bottom. So tomatoes are actually considered vines, and those little hairs are finding water and stuff and nutrients to create roots. So if you bury the tomato plant really deep, they actually create more roots, which I think is cool. Or if they touch the ground, if the stem touches the ground, then they can put roots down. And in this picture, we have green beans on this left side and cucumbers on the right side. And the other thing with green beans is they're another vegetable that grow as much support as they can feel. And so this is probably midsummer, not even like halfway into the growing season. And so these go all, this is just a few plants also. These reach all the way to the top. And then I had strings and I tied it from the top of here to this, the back of the fence post to try and make like a diagonal support. And they actually climbed all the way down that. And so it was full all the way up and all the way to the back. It was full of green beans. So that was cool. And on the right of this, we have, in the upper right corner, we have the carrots. It was my first successful time growing carrots, and I grew carrots in a container. So that was really cool because you could control the soil in a container. Got nice, fluffy, light soil that they could go straight down. If carrots get in compacted soil, that's when they would start forking or acting really weird. And so it was my first successful time growing carrots. The hardest thing with carrots is just getting them to germinate, getting them to sprout, because it takes a long time, and then if they ever dry out, then they die. And so yeah, and they're really tiny. And to the right of that, that's the ginger plant. And so that was really cool. And all parts of the ginger plant are edible too. And I thought it was really interesting. This is kind of the life cycle of that cantaloupe. It's a personal sized cantaloupe the size of a softball. So this is when it was first pollinated and the petals fell out, and it was actually fuzzy. And then a couple weeks later, it's like this size. It's almost a full size, but it's still kind of fuzzy. And then after that, it starts getting the webbing on it. And you just see it slowly coming up from the bottom to the top. It started with this webbing, and then I cut it open. The cool thing with cantaloupe, and the reason I have this netting around it, is they actually fall off from the stem when they're ripe. So just one day I walked out and I saw it hanging there. I was like, oh, it's ready. And so then we cut it up, and this is how ripe it was. It was very ripe and it tasted very good. So that's really cool. All right, another thing I mentioned is varieties. So there's so many varieties that you can't even find in the grocery store in the vegetable section. There are different colored carrots. So there's purple carrots, red carrots, white carrots, and of course, orange carrots. Yeah. So many types of carrots. And they each have like different flavors, textures. And again, like the black and purple carrots, they have those anthocyanins. So those got those health benefits. And then red carrots, they taste really sweet. And they all have different health benefits too, all the different colors. And again, there's different tomatoes. There's white tomatoes, purple tomatoes, and black tomatoes that you can't find in the grocery store. And there's striped tomatoes too. Different color watermelons. So we got the classic like red and pink watermelon. There's yellow, orange, and white watermelon also. And I mentioned this before when I was showing the container garden. The Mexican sour gherkin cucumber, also known as the cucamelon. That's what this is right here. It looks like a very small watermelon, but it's the size of a grape, and it's a cucumber, and it's kind of like considered like a wild cucumber. So it's a very disease resistant plant. It's really fun to grow. And it does taste like kind of already pickled. It's got a little bit of lemon taste to it. And so it's really interesting to try that for the first time. And that's something you don't even see or hear of if you couldn't grow it. And then next we have something called a kyoga beet, and this is really interesting. It's a striped beet with dark red and white stripes. So that's fun. Here we have a watermelon radish. This is a radish that gets kind of big, and it's white when it's under the ground, and then green when it's above the ground, and then it's got this dark magenta color in the middle of it. So that's really fun. We have this variety called Zucchino rapicante, or else it's called Tromboncino squash. And so this is another good squash because it can be grown as a summer squash when it's picked really immature and small. And I heard it can be also used as a winter squash when it gets a hard rind. And this is somewhere in the middle. And these got huge plants. And we go this in the 2019 season. And so look how huge these are. And the plants took over the garden. We had like one plant, and you saw that like 10 by 12 garden. It took over like the whole garden. And so that was an interesting event. It was really fun just to see it take over. And we got so much fruits from that. We had to give them away because there are so many. And this is one of my favorite flowers from last season. This is the candy striped zinnia. And I thought this was really interesting. This is also like an heirloom, been around for multiple generations. And there was yellow and orange in this mix, and it was all these different colors, the three colors with this magenta stripe to them. And I just thought that was beautiful. All right, and I just want y'all to grow something beautiful for you. So here again is the giant patch of candy striped zinnias. And then over here we have something called Dragon's Breath celosia. And that's really pretty. And I just loved this. I went out one night and there was all these pollinators, and then I just found this monarch butterfly, and I was like, that's awesome. Just going out and seeing the butterflies. And then here we have a large thing of cherry tomatoes. We grew around 11 tomato plants in that 10 by 12 garden, just like on the perimeter. And 5 or 6 of those were cherry. And by the end of the season, right before frost, me and my mom went out there, and we just picked all of them green, because if the frost came, it was going to kill the entire plant and you'd lose all those green tomatoes. And we've got, out of those 11 plants, we got 15 pounds of green tomatoes. And like 5 or 6 of those were from cherry tomatoes. And so that was amazing, just getting that much produce. And then we could put them in brown paper bags and they'd ripen. And that'd be like kind of like what you get at the grocery store when they get them green and let them ripen. And so we're eating tomatoes still in like December. I think the last time we had a ripe tomato from the garden was right before Christmas time. And so that was really fun. And here's the eggplants I grew. So this up in this right corner is eggplant flower, and I thought that was really interesting, like a kind of like a periwinkle blue, purplish color. I thought that was really pretty. And so one variety I grew was called the fairy tale eggplant, and so this is like a striped eggplant that's really small and good for containers. And this is a little older, on the older side, so that's why it's faded, but when it was young, it was nice and vibrant, dark purple with these stripes. And this was cool because it's a little twin. So you got 2 for 1 there. And then here's a white eggplant. This was really cool. It was really pretty because up close, it was like pearl, iridescent pearl color. And then here we have little froggy. I didn't grow the frog, but he's the guardian of the cucamelons. So I love seeing him going out there, and then a couple days a week I could go out and see him. He was really tiny. That is super zoomed up. So I didn't get close to him because I wanted to let him guard the cucamelons, but that's he was there a couple days a week. And then here's another cool flower I grew. This is from a purple secretia plant, and it's kind of like a succulent type leaf. And this would only bloom in the morning. So it was cool going out there in the morning and seeing the flowers. And they'd only last just the morning. And then by the afternoon, they'd be all dried up and closed and everything. The great thing about gardening is it helps you get to learn new skills. So something you can learn is seed saving. So this is where you can get the seeds, buy the seeds, and then or buy transplants, grow something, and then let it come to fruition and get to maturity, and then you'd save the seeds as long as it's not cross-pollinated, like where if a bee could go from one plant to another plant and it'd be the same vegetable in the same category. As long as it's not cross-pollinated, and it's an heirloom, which varieties has been there through multiple generations, it will come back as the same plant as you grew the year before. And so you can just keep on going, keep on saving. And people have seeds saved from multiple generations. And so it's really interesting to see people have seeds that have been in the family for multiple generations. This be their family's vegetable. So some vegetables we eat are already mature, like tomato plants, colored peppers, a winter squash. Winter squash is those squashes with a hard rind, like pumpkins, spaghetti squash, butternut. Those are seeds already mature. So you can, those seeds are ready to go. You just dry them and they're ready to go. There are some plants that either don't produce seeds or we eat them at a different point of life of the vegetable's life, meaning like summer squash. We eat summer squash when it's immature, it's nice and young, it hasn't formed the seeds yet. So you'd want to have those vegetables stay on the plant for their full maturity and let those get mature. And that's beyond the eating point. And there's some vegetables that we eat the different part of the plant. We eat the leaf, we eat the root. So root vegetables like carrots, beets, radishes, we gotta let those come to seed. And so right here on this picture on the right is actually a radish that I let go to flower. So that's a radish flower. And so how they produce seeds, because you think a root crop, how do they produce seeds? So the bees and pollinators would pollinate these flowers and then they drop off and then they produce pods. And you can eat the pods, and it's amazing, the pods taste exactly like the radish itself. And it's cool because you can get like still a crop from it and then keep some on there to save as seeds. And so I just let it make the pods and let it dry on the plant. And then I took the seeds out of the pod and actually grew radishes in the fall. So I grew this in the spring and let it go through seed. And I planted those same seeds that I got from it in the fall, and I still got another radish from it. So that's amazing. Another skill you can get to learn is how to preserve the harvest. So this is like canning. Canning can save food for up to a year or even more. Learn how to freeze it properly, get all the air out, make sure it's not freezer burnt. How to ferment, things like that is really cool. How to keep your produce that you've grown and make it last throughout the winter and into next year. There's winter squash, like vegetables that you don't have to preserve in the sense of doing something to it other than making sure it has the hard rind. So winter squash has that hard rind, you cure it properly. If it's cured properly, it's got that hard rind, it can last for many months depending on the variety, like the pumpkins, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, and there's other varieties too. Sweet potato is another one that if it forms the skin properly, it can last about a year. I've seen a video where a lady had it stored downstairs and she's had it for 2 years. And she says it's not going to taste as good as the really fresh ones, but it's good to know that something you grow can last up to like 2 years. What's another one? Yeah, and like regular potatoes, onions is another good storage crop. So things like that, just educating yourself on how to preserve it and how to make it last. Another good skill to learn is cooking. So you get to try new flavors with the stuff you grow and things like that. And then here I have a picture of something called shishito pepper. It's a Japanese pepper that you just poke it and then blister it. And then it's a good appetizer, and that's really healthy. So if you decide how to start, you want to decide what location you want to put your plants in. You want to make sure they get that sunlight. Then you want to choose the way and the method you want to plant. Once you choose that, then you choose what kinds of plants and what varieties you want to grow. Then from there, you want to go choose your soil. If you want to grow in containers or not, you decide what to put in there and you control what's in there. Make sure it's not too compacted or sandy. Then you get your plants. Do you want to start from seed or transplant? And there's benefits to both of those. If you grow from seed, you get the choice of more variety. And if you get for transplant from like a local nursery or a garden center, you're kind of limited on variety, but it buys you time. And they're also a little bit more expensive from starting from seed. And you want to pay close attention to watering and fertilizing, making sure they have enough nutrients, making sure they're not overwatered or underwatered. And that's another good big thing I noticed that people, it's okay to forget, but just make sure they got enough water. And then after that, just watch them grow. And then I want to recommend two of my favorite YouTube channels for information. There's one called Am I Gardener? And he's up from Michigan, and so he's another great videos of how to grow things in containers. And then there's just about everything you can think of how to grow. He's made like grow guides for how to grow it, what it needs. And he believes you can grow anything anywhere. Another good one is Roots and Refuge Farm, and she has these awesome garden tours, and she has a beautiful garden. She has to cook for she cooks for like her family, which is her husband, and she's got 5 boys, so she's got a huge garden, and she grows about all of her food for the year, which is amazing. And she's also has great educational content. Okay, I'm gonna give it over to you, Mom.
Leanne, that was great.
Fantastic.
Dan, are you ready for me? I
Yes.
can give mine in just a few minutes, and then we'll have time if there are questions.
Yeah, please do. We've got some questions.
All right. Well, I started gardening before Leanne did, and I've always worked full time. So my spiel on this is I was very simple in what I chose to grow and how I did it. I only grew tomatoes, cucumbers, banana peppers, bell peppers. I used to always fertilize with coffee grounds and eggshells. And we had the great privilege of being able to use rainwater to water our garden because my husband had designed a way to capture the rainwater. I'd always grown just a few herbs. I started growing fennel this year, and I discovered I really enjoy fennel, the root as well as the weed on the plant, and it's very, very easy to grow. Fennel, like dill and cilantro, if you buy a plant or if you buy seed one year, you'll get them for free the next year. They're very easy to seed themselves. If you want an easy herb, those 3 are it. You saw the potatoes in the box. I won't go over that again. Leanne introduced me to some additional herbs. I have to laugh. She grew catnip in a container in our front yard, and our neighborhood cats would like to visit, take a little nip here and there. They had so much fun with that. The spicy peppers, I'd never done this before, but Leanne grew what were they called? Sriracha peppers?
We had cayenne and we had a mystery pepper.
Okay,
It was labeled sweet thing pepper, but it was not sweet. So
okay.
we don't
They-
know what it is.
They were very varying levels of flavor of heat. And she dried them and ground them. And I'm still using them in my cooking, and they're really good. And they give it a little extra spice. She grew and harvested spaghetti squash, and she got one. It wasn't a long enough growing season quite, but I saved it for a long time, and I just cut it up today, and I had some with my lunch. It was very, very good. You take the raw squash, you cut it in half, and you scrape the seeds out. You put it in the oven with a little water. You do it the same way that you would do a pumpkin. You roast the vegetable in the oven with a little water. This was a very, very small spaghetti squash, so I only had it in there for about a half an hour. And I took it out, let it cool. And you take a fork and you scrape all the squash out of the rind, and you eat it, and it looks like spaghetti. And it picks up the flavors of whatever sauce you put on it. If you want tomato sauce or whatever kind of sauce you want, it just picks up those flavors. It's delicious. And it's packed full of vitamin B. All of those squashes and the dark greens, they're all packed with vitamins, vitamin B, onions. And if anyone remembers a talk I gave about a year and a half ago, and I mentioned garlic, I'm growing my own garlic now, and I'm loving it. So Dan, do we have questions?
Yeah, let's take some questions and let's try to keep them kind of short because we're getting close on time. So question, how do you harvest turmeric?
Can you repeat that for a second?
How do you harvest and use turmeric?
Turmeric. So right before it was freezing, I harvested it because that's like a tropical plant and it likes hot and warm weather. I really took it out of its container, and then I saw which tubers, when it formed the big tubers, it was still pretty young to form skin, so it had just a thin skin on it. I like took the tubers and I took the big ones, and then you could cut those up and cook with them. You can also use the leaves, and we've dried the leaves downstairs, and you can rehydrate it, and you still get that turmeric flavor.
And another question, where do you find turmeric?
Jungle Gems.
Yeah, we found it at Jungle Gems. We just took the plant you buy, and it's something called a rhizome. So like what's a rhizome? So it literally when I put it in the soil, then it would sprout. And then once it sprouted, then it would make the other plants, and it would actually spread a little bit. So that's another good thing with containers is you can contain it if you don't want it to get too big. We didn't have long enough growing season for it to get big, but yeah.
Another question, I was told you can store carrots over the winter in sand in a cool basement. Is that a good way to store carrots?
Yeah, I've seen them where they store like sawdust, and you gotta get like the right temperature and right humidity, and you can store carrots for a long time. Another thing you can do with root crops like beets and carrots is you can leave them in the ground over winter, and then the tops would die off. And so example for this was this winter, we grew beets, and we still had beets through that crazy February snowstorm. And then right after the ground thawed, I went out there, and even the tops were dead. And I harvested the beets, and they were perfectly fine. So that's another way. You got two good ways to store them.
Two quick questions. Any ideas on weed prevention?
Your black plastic, Leanne.
Yeah,
That was-
one way we did was when the weeds got really bad and we didn't have time to pull them by hand, we had this black plastic hanging around, and I just put black plastic on top of the weeds and like put bricks down. and then the heat from the black plastic and the lack of sunlight killed the weeds. And so that's the way, and then it would decompose and go back into the ground. Another way is with mulching. So this year we use sawdust mulch, but there's many other forms of mulch, and that helps prevent weeds and also helps against like backsplashing when it rains really hard, and then it would spray dirt on the plants and that would create disease. So mulch is another good thing for many reasons.
This is a question from Jennifer. How do you control pests without pesticides?
That's another big one. There's organic pesticides that you can use that are like certified organic that are okay to use. And you can do more research on that. Another way we personally, I've tried using is like lime powder, and the insects that crawl on the leaves, it would kill them through their exoskeleton when they molt. So that's one we did.
Evelyn asked a question. How do you keep your tomatoes so long from summer, fall until almost Christmas?
When I mulched them at the base, and then I took a lot of leaves from the bottom, so you don't get that splashback, because that's where you get most of the disease. And preventing the disease is a big thing for tomatoes to make them last as long, and just watch watering and stuff like that.
And at the end of the growing season, if you have to pick them green or lose them, you put them in a brown paper bag and put them in a cool, dry place, and they'll ripen nicely in a brown paper bag for you.
Nice. Tony asked
Oh,
a
yeah.
question. I've had problems with squirrels getting into my containers of tomatoes and peppers on my desk. Suggestions.
The squirrels, I'll tell you, they're
So-
tough.
So this one for my carrots, to get them out of the carrot container, I had it's almost like a black side table, but it was kind of like had a grid on the side. And I just put that on top of the carrots, and that helps to get the squirrels out of the carrots. And then it also helped. Carrots don't like very hot weather because they'll send the flower stalk, and so that helps them through the very hot weather also. So like putting a fence around it or something like that.
And Leanne, just for my kind of help, I told you this is a little outside my comfort zone. So if I wanted to come up with a little plot of ground and trying to grow a few of these things, what would be my suggested size I should try to start with?
We started by 8 by 8.
You can grow as small or as big as you want. I've seen little kits, like a 4x4 plot, little kits you can get at the store. They're really cool, like a little raised bed kit. You can start off with like one container and just start from there, because like just trying something, you get something. Even if you fail, you learn something. Yeah.
And so we're all a team here at Empower You. So do you and your mom and your dad all come with the team, and you'll just go to everybody's house and help them? That's no problem, right? We can just count on you.
Yes. Give us a call.
You know, it's been just incredibly great to hear from you tonight, Karen and Leanne. And Leanne, I just got to ask you, with your criminal justice degree, what do you hope to do with it?
There's a lot of options. I've kind of thought about the going into law, but now I'm kind of looking into like expert witness. I'd like to be an expert witness and see what kind of education I need to get there. I think that would be fun.
Well, I hope you'll allow us to put your PowerPoint up on the website, and we surely appreciate all the time you spent preparing for us tonight. Thank you, Leanne and Karen, for a great presentation on organic gardening. Good night, and have a good night to you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So everybody, we're just about rounding third. I've got just one thing that I want to do before I let you go tonight, and we've got an Empowered Citizen Award that I want to present to somebody who I think is deserving. And thanks again for that great presentation on organic gardening. And I'm really sorry that I didn't get to one question that Michelle had about AFTAB on a previous guest, Steve Goodwin. So tonight, I wanted to present an Empowered Citizen Award to somebody that some of you probably will have heard of, and that's Janice Dean. And I'm presenting it not for kind of the PC reason, but I wanted to just tell you a little bit about her and her great new book, which is our giveaway, Make Your Own Sunshine. She was born in 1970 in Toronto, Canada, and is married and has 2 children. She was a traffic reporter in Texas in 1998 and started at Fox News as a weather person in 2004. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2005 and became known for Mornings with Maria in 2014. Mostly, Janice Dean has been known recently for exposing New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo for changing the statistics on COVID-19 nursing home deaths in New York. 2 of her in-laws in the nursing homes died during this terrible time for her. And she's been super vigilant in exposing these deaths and on asking for reform. She's really been like an attack dog. She clearly didn't want attention. She didn't feel like she wanted to put herself out there. She didn't really want to get in the fray, but she did. And the thing that about Janice Dean that makes her an empowered citizen is just really her incredible positive outlook on life, something that's hard right now and that we could all be just a little bit better at. She has a great new book out tonight called Make Your Own Sunshine, Stories of Everyday Heroes. I'm pleased to say tonight that Jackie R. is the winner of this book. But it's great to be able to give the book away, and I can't wait to read it. I read a few of the stories from it, and they really, really, really were great and positive. And I just think for sharing good news about people with the world, I think that Janice Dean is the perfect example of an empowered citizen. This is somebody who has stepped up to help when they were needed, whether it was a good time for them or not. That's somebody like a lot of each of you out there. So now we're a little bit late, sorry. Take tonight and please never forget the case of our poor, smelly, canceled friend, Pepe Le Pew. With that, I say now, go out and empower you. Good night.